Scunthorpe United have lost 4-0 at home to Exeter City this afternoon.
Love it.
Open wide for some soccer!
Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. Welcome, everybody, to the DN35 podcast. It is an FA Cup special because for once we're still in it after the first round. My opinions on the FA Cup being an absolute shithouse to us are probably not needed today after our 5-0 demolition of the might that is Sporting Bromsgrove Sporting, whatever their name was. No disrespect. We're also joined by Elliot Jackson of the Grimsby Telegraph. Elliot, nice to have you aboard.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Bruce is here looking resplendent as ever with his Omen t-shirt behind. The last known sighting of the great man. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Another little trip to familiar surroundings coming up.
Yeah, that's very true. What, for me?
Well, no, it's not on TV this time.
No, that's true. And then I don't know. I'm not the part-timer anymore. What can I say?
No, almost regular.
Yeah, exactly. You should really, step up the game. And then Mike as well has joined us as well in what looks like a period blackboard behind him, but I assume it's a blind. It looks like an American style one.
Yeah, it's I'm in my work office, mate, so I quickly hid all the stuff that was behind me.
Or was it top secret information?
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, gents, we'll crack on with everything. Who's got a little bit of an echo? Let's have a look. I'm going to mute you all. So I'm being really rude. Can you all unmute anyway when I've done that? No, you cannot. That is not a power. Oh, there we go. Oh, Bruce, I think it might be you. Gents, it was a wonderful game yesterday. Hang on, I'm going to have to mute somebody because that is it's like someone's talking to me like half a second after I've spoken, and that's really makes me sound drunk. Right, brilliant. It was a great game yesterday, enjoyed by everybody, even us who were poor and watched it on the BBC Red Button. A thoroughly professional performance. Bruce, were you there?
I was, mate. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it was very civilised.
What were your thoughts? Did you enjoy it? Did you stop off at Aldi before you went in? What was the overall feeling at the ground?
It was I think it was probably the most relaxed atmosphere I've ever been at a competitive fixture. It was from about the 20th minute, it was just like, I just wandered around chatting to people, and the game was just sort of a backdrop. It was very strange. I thought we'd win, but I didn't think it would be quite that comfortable, and we probably should have had double figures, to be fair. There was a blatant golfing class, and I don't know whether they never really seemed to have a go. One of their early attacks, I just looked, and they've got two little lads up against Pearson and Long King, and it just like, they're not gonna, and then they just kept booting the ball quite long and quite direct, and it was just like they just headed it away for fun. Yeah, it was a bit of a mismatch, really, but we're safely through, aren't we? And it was, I didn't get long enough in the town, really. We were picking a lad up on the way, and he was 20 minutes late, but so we probably lost a pint there. But yeah, no, it was all good, mate, and we go marching on to the first round proper.
It was a pretty big crowd for them, was it? It didn't seem very raucous on the telly, or was it for anybody really?
No, well, like I say, the town fans, there was a little bit of singing and a little bit there, and the first 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, obviously Elliot was there as well, but the first 10 or 15 minutes were a little bit lively. But you soon we know what it's like. We've conceded quick fire goals, haven't we? You soon get the stuffing knocked out of you, and that was what happened with the atmosphere. And yeah, it was very, very one-sided and just what we needed, really. And now we've got another full week without a game, which is great and gives him some more problems, doesn't it? But we'll come on to the team for next week, I'm sure, in time.
Elliot, what were your thoughts? I mean, I guess in the press box, it must have been quite full for once.
Yeah, you could say that. I was actually sat in one of the directors' seats because they didn't have enough. So they got the press bench up round the back. It basically got enough room for about 5 people. So Radio Humberside and whatever their local radio station, BBC is, they took that. So it's basically almost like a free for all in and around that sort of area in the director's seat. So I was just perched with my laptop on my knees, which was fine. But the bigger issue was trying to get some internet, which I eventually did, to avoid having to ditch the Matchday blog, which I thought was going to be an issue until about an hour before kickoff. But no, it was good. It was a decent little ground, to be fair. I thought the pitch was in good nick. I went down on the pitch to do media after speaking to Paul Hurst, and pitch was in decent condition. Obviously, there was quite a big slope, as there is at Maidenhead, pretty similar to that. But the actual grass itself was in decent condition to play football. There was only one sort of big bobble that I noticed, which was when Harry Clifton was running down the left in the first half and went to hit it with his left foot, and he just shot up and he basically shin padded it into the home fans behind the goal. So it was a good day out. There was a nice little Greggs across the road, which got me my lunch, which is always a result. But no, it was good, and I think Grimsby did everything they needed to do. It was a professional job. Paul Hurst had said when we did media on Friday that it was very much, you got all these sort of ingredients there for an FA Cup upset. You know, the TV were there. It's an early kickoff away from home against a team 2 divisions below. But Grimsby very much started the game very well. And the big test for them was, can they match the intensity and the tempo that obviously Bromsgrove were going to come out? The first 15 minutes of any tie like that, that's where the hosts can really do their damage, and Grimsby did really well to match that intensity, that running, and you knew as the game wore on that the quality and the fitness levels in particular would then kick in. So it was navigating that first 15 minutes, quietening the crowd down a little bit, and making sure that, you know, they were professional and did their due diligence, and to make 7 changes as well with that. It was a great performance, really, and good professionalism until obviously they then opened the scoring, and then the floodgates followed from then.
Mike, what were the with the 7 changes that came in? Were there any that really stood out for you on the way that the team performed? Are there any particular headaches that Hurst has now for the game against Yeovil on Saturday? And did you enjoy watching it on telly? You're on mute. There you go. Oh, you're still on mute. I can't unmute you. Can't unmute your guest because they chose to mute themselves. That is rude. Yeah. What did you think? Did you enjoy Jermaine Beckford's analysis?
Yeah, enjoy is a word. I don't think it's applicable, but it was really weird watching Town on the telly for the first time in ages. Had in-laws round, so I was sat in the corner being rude, ignoring everybody, just watching the game. In terms of sort of headaches for Paul Hurst, I think he's got that this season anyway. And I mean, making 7 changes yesterday sort of typifies that. The fact that our 2 centre-backs yesterday were probably what you would have said at the start of the season would be our 2 starting centre-backs. And it sort of shows the depth and strength we've got this year, that he can make those changes and give himself plenty of headaches. I think in terms of the players that came in, I think Revan sort of stood out. His finishing was, really good for a left-back. I'd be surprised if he stayed a left-back throughout his career. But yeah.
I mean, the one controversial moment we had in the game was pretty cleared up pretty quickly by Lee Blease this morning with the goal that was not a goal, or was apparently a controversial decision if you listen to any of the BBC commentary. It was then found to be about 1.5 feet over the line. That is not that's just my ego coming into play then when I'm playing with the cameras. There we go. That was the... Oh, no, that's even worse. There we go. That was the image. Over 1.5 miles behind the line, so much so that it was basically in a different postcode. It was a nice header by David Lloyd King, who, by the way, seems to be the coolest man on earth whenever having a header. I've never seen a man seem to pose for each header that he makes. I mean, the picture before it was, what was it? That one. The man oozes class every time he has a header. I've never seen anything quite like it. But I mean, it was a pretty good goal for him. I was a little bit disappointed, I guess. I don't know. What did you guys think about the second penalty? We can always go on and discuss Lenny because I know he always divides opinion. But what were your thoughts on the second penalty? Should Seb have been given the chance to complete his hat trick? I know, apparently, according to Paul Hurst, it was it Giles Coke went over and had a quick chat with him and saying, "Oh, leave it." I don't know, Elliot. Did you get to have a word with him afterwards?
We asked Paul after the game about that, and I think Seb was interested in taking it, obviously, as you would be on a hat trick. But I think rather than you never like to see these things. You know, it happens in the Premier League a fair bit where people like to spat and fight over the ball on the pitch. It just looks amateurish, and I think regardless, Giles Coke just went over and had a just leave him to it because you just don't need the attention, do you, on that? But he might have been better taking it in hindsight because obviously Lenny went and missed.
Do we need to start talking about penalties? We jokingly put out on Twitter that we might need a penalty coach. I don't know what you gentlemen think about it. We have missed a few now. Granted, it usually comes from a position in which we don't need to worry too much. Is there anything to be said? Both that one and the McAtee one were pretty shit penalties, to be perfectly honest. They were both straight down the gullet of the keeper. Is there anything in particular just too calm and lucid because we, 9-0 up at the time? Or am I reading far too much into it, trying to find controversy where there is none?
I think the difficult thing is that they're not always had the same players on the pitch when we've been taking the penalties, have we?
No.
So I think like Elliot says that, and Hursty says, let them sort it out on the pitch as long as it's done properly. But yeah, I completely agree though. With the ones yesterday, to be honest, he could have taken it at 4-0 up. We were 4. Was it fair? No, that made it 4-0. That made it 4-0. Sorry, no, at 3-0. Yeah, probably certainly the second penalty. It was an appalling penalty, wasn't it? I
thought they were quite similar. To be fair, I think he just tried to sort of copy what he did the first time, and
didn't do it.
They look bad, don't they? When the goalkeeper stands still, they look worse.
I'll tell you what did look bad, bless him. That one when he did everything right, turned the defender from just behind the goal. That was that shot over our heads.
The left-footed one, yeah.
Everything was perfect. Just drill it. But it was just that little bit of composure that was missing. But I thought his all-round play in general yesterday was excellent. And like we said before, but he has looked rusty. But I think that maybe some of that is testament as well to the way that Ryan Taylor's performed. That he's excelled what I expected of him this season, and I think he's probably played more minutes than anybody expected with Lenny's injury and things like that. So, yeah, I think Lenny is what Lenny always has been, and you could see Giles Coke pushing him towards the Town fans when he scored the penalty. He's obviously he's maybe one of those that beats himself up a lot, and he maybe wanted him to be able to enjoy scoring, and like you say, perhaps should have quit after the first one.
I mean, he doesn't need to beat himself up. There are some Town fans that will do it for him. I've never seen a player that is divided opinions so much. He's very much in my head a bit like Livo, especially now because he seems to have lost half a yard of pace. I think there are questions maybe about his fitness, or maybe it's his age. He certainly seemed to be a bit leggy when I saw him at Woking. But yesterday, I thought he had a really strong performance. I think he's the sort of player that brings others into play and brings them in. I keep saying he's got the strongest arse in football. I don't think there's a man that shields a ball better than him that's played for Town in the last sort of 10 years. It's just the finishing product. And as sort of Elliot alluded to before we came on air, as I said at the time, if he could finish as ravenously as Revan did with that first goal, then he probably wouldn't be here. He'd be somewhere higher up in the league. But where do you think the criticism is undue? I think he obviously missed a fair few yesterday, but where do you all stand on Lenny? I guess is probably the best way of asking. You can go off on it on your own. Mike, what do you think about the man?
I'm a bit of a fan of Lenny. I think he gets a bit of a bad rap. I think there's a legitimate argument about his goal scoring and his ability to score goals. But I think his ability to work hard for the team, bring others into play and allow others around him to do well is underplayed quite often. I think if you look back at some of the strikers we've had in the past, I don't think Lenny deserves the criticism he gets when you compare it with those players.
Who? Throw
Green.
someone under the bus.
Matt Green.
Okay, yeah, fine. That's fine. This is why Mike's allowed on.
Yeah, but Mike, to be fair though, and I'm not a Lenny critic, that's not really a positive comparison, is it? You could have said you could have said if I compare him with Alan Connell or Liam Hearn or somebody, you're comparing him with the shittest striker we've had in about 20 years.
Yeah, but they're massively different players.
That is a hotly contested place.
That's not going to give the people that are listening to this sort of like, oh well, he's better than Matt Green. That's you need more. Give me more.
But they're completely different players, those players, Bruce. I mean, if you put somebody like a Connell or an Hammond into this team now, I think the team doesn't perform as well as it has been. I think you need somebody up front that's a presence that players can play off and hold on to the ball, allow Sousa and Papaga, those sorts of players to get in and around the penalty area. I mean, I think Ryan Taylor definitely has the shirt and has far outperformed Lenny, but Lenny's not had a pre-season and this is his first 90 minutes. So if this was the first game in pre-season, would we be saying, oh, well, write him off because he's not sharp enough? He's not played.
No, I'm only messing. And the problem is
he's not. He means it really.
We've talked about it as well. We've talked about it, Alex, haven't we? The lack of reserve team opportunities these days. There is nowhere for them to get match fit. I think we said they've got three games before Christmas for the reserves. It's just not enough for when you've got a squad of 20 plus players. Where do they get the match fitness? These lads, they've only got the FA Cup early round, and you can't imagine that in the next round we're going to play make 7 changes again. Or I wouldn't think that. Kidderminster are a step up again, aren't they? And it's not. So they're going to get the games in the trophy, and that's going to be it, isn't it? Effectively, if you're a squad player, and that's your chance.
Sorry, you almost need like an affiliate club association thing where somewhere like Cleethorpes Town, maybe Boston United's a bit too high up, where you can go, right, these guys are in the squad. I've picked my squad on Friday. We'll keep 2 in reserve just in case. These other lads, if you want to pick them this week, you can do. And Gainsborough Trinity or someone could have, instead of like a loan system where they go out for a month or 3 and it's a sort of a big job if you actually have to recall them, especially at this level, given the small amount of subs on the bench as well. Maybe it's pie in the sky stuff. I'm
not sure Cleethorpes Town's opponents would probably be that keen on that idea.
Yeah, maybe. It's just it's a shame, isn't it? You get all these half decent players that are just they can't do anything because there's no reserve games and they can't perform anywhere other than sort of probably 11v11 on a Thursday or a Friday, I guess. Bruce, what were you finishing on with Lenny? Because I like the guy, but he's like every player in non-league, isn't he? He's frustrating at times. That's all.
Well, we've always said that there are players that are at this level, and they're at this level for a reason. Like Youngie just said, if he scored more goals, he wouldn't be here. And likewise, if he scored 25 goals a season, he probably wouldn't be here, and he didn't have the hold-up play. I just think that I think he's a good player, and I also think that Hursty has a couple of players where he's happy for them to be in his squad and not necessarily in his team. And that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but he's obviously a big character and a guy who is big in the dressing room, and they like him. And I think, just to change subject slightly, I've seen it with Giles Coke in the last 2 or 3 games, an older player who's been the first one onto the pitch at the end of the game, having not played. All right, he played yesterday, but he's absolutely made up for his teammates. He's hugging and they're high-fiving, and he's straight away this season got that squad unity that he likes, and I think Lenny's a big part of that. And yeah, I don't think he'll, if we keep everybody fit, I don't think he'll play that many games this season. And he's getting older. I think Mike said, or you said, he's getting older, isn't he? What is he, 33, 34? And he's a big, and it's no criticism, he's a big physical presence. That's got to get harder and take more out of him, hasn't it? Getting around the pitch. He's not a Mick Balding build or a Connell. Yeah, all right. We're not talking about your football today, but yeah, he's not that sort of build, is he? And like I say, he's muscular and he's big and he probably weighs quite a lot, and it can't be hard getting around the pitch. Well, can't be easy getting around the pitch.
Is it? Did yesterday? Because obviously, I think. Well, actually, he's touching on what you said, Bruce, with sort of the personalities. It's no surprise that he brought him in straight away. and Giles Coke, you've got two big personalities there that can help sort of motivate teams. Harry Clifton looks exactly the same. Elliot, you probably know more about this now that you spend a bit more time around the squad. But if you've got someone like, you've got a good nucleus there of Giles Coke, Lenny, Sean Pearson, Macca, who expect the very best of the team, the players around you. And one of the reasons we get ourselves in the shit as we did in League Two is we didn't necessarily have those players around. That we didn't have those players where it was, we just had a lot of just enoughs where that's absolutely fine. And then I'll go home and, you know, do a bit on Sky Sports and Talk Sport instead. And that sort of thing. I don't know how you guys feel, but Elliot, do you see that at the camp? Are there particular personalities there that really stand out in terms of leaders and alike?
Yeah, I think you make a very valid point about the characters in the dressing room. It's important just for the makeup of the squad that you've got enough players and that balance is there. And, you know, these are players in Lenny and in Giles Coke in particular that are players that are still very active within the squad. As you say, we fully expected both to start yesterday. It's the sort of game that they come in and, you know, Giles Coke in particular is not someone that coming into the season anyone expected to be on the fringes. Paul Hurst has said as much after the Woking game that if you'd said to him at the start of the season that Giles Coke wouldn't be in his team, he'd have said that's not true, or you're mad, basically, because he'd expect him to be part of that. And, you know, they've got players that are in the dressing room for a reason. And they've got these people that are still, but they are very much playing an active role. And I think it was important with the recruitment drive in the summer that they did bring some of those characters back in the summer, like bringing Sean Pearson back to the club, as you've said there, but equally complementing that with the younger players that they've got. And I definitely see some of the younger players growing into roles. I think Harry Clifton in particular is really good. He's been fantastic from what I've seen so far. And he does seem like the sort of player, having interviewed him after Woking as well, that could grow into a sort of leadership role as he gets older and a bit more senior within the group itself. So, yeah, I'm liking what I'm seeing. On Lenny, I think that it's fair to say, for me, the thing that struck me, which is, you know, why I wrote a piece this morning saying that they should probably look at another striker, was just purely because there was a chance in the first half where he was slipped through 1-on-1 at 3-0, and he forced double save from the goalkeeper, but it was the way he went to strike the ball, and it just didn't look natural. It didn't look like a natural finisher going through on goal. And yes, you can put that down to rustiness or confidence, but I still think it just didn't strike me as a natural goal scorer. And I just think if Ryan Taylor was to get injured for 6-10 weeks or whatever, because, you know, he himself is the wrong side of 30. So I just wonder if he was to get an injury, if they could rely on Lenny both from a fitness point of view and also from a goal scoring point of view for an extended run of that. That's not to say they sign a striker and stick Lenny on the scrap heap. It's just to say, do they need another option coming off the bench if Taylor was to get injured, for example? And I just think that is the one hole potentially in the squad, because otherwise, you know, for a National League club, the strength and depth they've got, you know, having 4 centre-backs of the quality they've got, for example, really interested to see what he does at right-back against Yeovil in particular. And left-back, he's got a decision now as well, because Crooks has been, for me, one of the most underrated performers of the season so far. And then Seb goes and gets 2 goals and takes his chance with an assist as well. So the strength and depth that they've got at the minute, it's making it hard for Paul Hurst, and he's going to have to be ruthless with his decision-making.
I feel very Talk Sport now, trying to find the negative in sort of, it's a shame that Lenny missed that last penalty rather than flicking it the other way. Because if you'd have missed the first one and then put away the second, it'd have been a nice little confidence booster on the way out. But I mean, a couple of people have come in. Leaches said Lenny has never looked like a natural in front of goal. To be fair, that's a bit harshly. Andy Carr said regarding Lenny, I remember Nathan Arnold saying how you appreciate how much Lenny offers, and the players enjoying having him around the team when they're playing with him. And that's one thing we've sort of discussed, that he does bring people into the game. California manager said he absolutely loves Lenny, thought his hold-up play yesterday was excellent. We don't need him to score 20 goals a season. We need to bring others into play and let them do their thing. 5 goals yesterday suggests it worked. All hail the king. California manager Mariner is not at all, biased in his thoughts there.
I think that's a good point as well, that Elliot's talking about we need another striker. I don't think the sort of striker that Hursty suggests that he's looking for is a Lenny type player.
No, I get that.
He talks, doesn't he, about, we talk about if Ryan Taylor gets injured. Well, to me as a fan looking on, Ryan Taylor is a bit more of the physical presence. He's not got Lenny's physical presence, but I think his hold-up play and bringing others into play has been excellent. And like we say, the reason that he's got the nod at the moment is he's got more fitness and he looks like he's going to score more goals. But I think what I get the impression that what he's looking for is somebody maybe a bit younger and a bit sharper in the Mick Balding type mould at this level.
You are Caden Jackson, don't you?
Yeah. So he's looking for something like that, isn't he? But are we limited at this level? How many lone players we can play in a team on a match day? Does anybody know?
I don't think so off the top of my head, because obviously it's just a completely different.
We were in the Football League, weren't we? Was it 5?
Yeah.
Was it 5?
Yeah, I still think it's 5.
It's 5 in the National League. In the Football League, sorry, I don't know if that carries through.
Yeah,
I imagine at the moment there's someone in the National League actually scrambling around because they've probably not even made a rule up for it and just realised, given the way this league operates, I think it's probably 5. I'd imagine, but it'd be someone like that. I mean, even someone like Owen Windsor, but apparently his attitude was not necessarily the primo attitude that Hurst was wanting. And you can understand why he's been a bit selective in the players he brings in, and why he's had obviously offers that are on the table. Who's like, well, at the moment, it's not broken until, say, Taylor or McAtee get injured. Maybe he doesn't necessarily need to pull the trigger on a somebody to come in. But Edwin Essel got on as well and had a chance. I think he had a good shout of a penalty when he got barged in the back, but maybe he was just out of the way of it. And I mean, we should probably move on at some point. But did anybody else? I'll be honest, I'm slightly biased to the lads, and I was very tempted to have their number 3 up for attempted murder on old Bapaga. What did you make of that challenge? I know some people were saying it was just a yellow. I thought it was excessive force, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. If you're late, you're late. We all saw it with Andrew Fox with in our Crystal Palace game, where he just got to Townsend. He was just too slow for him and got sent off for it. What did you guys make of it? And how many years should he get? What about you, Bruce?
I thought at the time that it looked like he got drawn in by a bad first touch. That he had a heavy first touch, and the defender then thought that he could get there, and the guy was just quicker than he was. It looked. I wouldn't have wanted a red card for that. I thought it was a yellow card, and that was. It just he got there late, and because he was travelling at speed, because he probably had to travel at speed, because like I say, his first touch wasn't great, and it just gave the defender what he thought was a sniff, but he just had more pace and got there in front of him and got a toe on it, and he did a triple Salco.
Is anyone going to support me on this, or are we all of the manner that it's a yellow?
I think if that's in the Premier League, he gets sent off, doesn't he? And it's probably an orange in the way that, if you want to liken it with VAR, I don't think VAR overrules that if that's a yellow or it's a red. I think that is down to interpretation. It's somewhere in the middle. There's definitely, when you put the argument of excessive force in it, you can't really argue with it. He does absolutely clatter him. But I also think
Bruce will have a go.
Like Bruce. No, I think like what Bruce says, I don't think it was malicious. I think Sousa slightly overruns the ball, doesn't he, with his first touch, and that's what draws in the defender. But he just absolutely clatters him, doesn't he? Like, it looked bad from where I was sat. Yeah, it looked bad from in real time looking at it. Obviously from the stand. But then to watch the replay, as I've seen on the internet this morning, it looks even worse on TV.
Sorry, go on.
I think, as Elliot said, if that's higher up, or if it's on the continent, then that's probably people are looking at a red, but not at that level. I think it was late.
Not in Bromsgrove.
Yeah, not in Bromsgrove. not on the telly. But yeah, I think it was late and nothing else. So a yellow card.
Just going back to Alex. Just going back to Elliot's comments about the VAR and all that sort of stuff. When I did get home, when I got home, Maisie got dropped off because she'd made the wrong choice yesterday. She wanted to go do something with her friends instead of come to the game. But I got home and she wanted to watch the full 90 minutes that I'd recorded, and I thought it was hilarious when the goal that they were deciding wasn't in, and the ref was looking at his watch only to see what time it was. And I think it was Beckford was trying to work out whether they got goal line technology at Bromsgrove.
I should. Yeah,
his watch is vibrating. Is it?
The closest thing they'd have to goal line technology at our level would be some sort of cow that sits up or stands down or sits up if if it goes over the line. I thought the commentary was they were hoping for the upset that it was pretty much washed out. Andy Carr makes Jermaine Beckford's comments regarding Papaga and Insigne, who's being theatrical, were laughable. I absolutely agree. They also certainly made a meal of the header that wasn't that was. It was a shame for them. We obviously ruined their day. Before we move on, are there any players that you'd like to sort of single out for performances? I thought Fox, who I thought had a pretty poor game at Woking, was really good yesterday. I thought he moved the ball around well. I thought Crooks was particularly performed well as well. That's probably the second game that he's stood out. What about you guys?
I thought Bapega stood out in a different position, which was interesting, playing him in that number 10 role rather than on the wing. Something he's done at Coventry in particular, from what I gather, playing more centrally, playing two-touch rather than out wide where he can drive. And I just thought he was too much for him because he got that freedom to basically work across the width of that attacking third, link up in the right channel, in the left channel. I thought him, Revan and Clifton down that left-hand side, sort of playing little triangles, really, really tore them apart. And it's interesting with McAtee potentially being out of Yeovil, although they are hopeful he'll be fit for that. If he's injured, does Bapega get a go in that role? Because you're now looking at it, and if McAtee's fit, he comes back in at number 10. Clifton's going to play on the left, and then you've got one of Sousa or Bapega. So is that a way that potentially both of them get in the starting 11 if McAtee's not fit? It just gives them another string to the bow where they have trialled it. What I would say is the fact that I'm not sure whether Paul Hurst would do it in a National League game, because I do think the work rate you get from McAtee in that number 10 role compared to Bapega off the ball is quite noticeable and quite different. So I think he'd probably be more likely to go 4-3-3 with that same personnel and move Clifton inside one, probably.
I think he's played Sousa a bit in that role, hasn't he? I think there was one of the games where McAtee went off, and I think he played Sousa sort of more centrally in the McAtee role. But yeah, I thought the only thing I would say yesterday is that it was a brilliant game to get some of them game time, and like we said, they got the result that we all wanted. But I thought that they obviously, I thought they stood off us a little bit for even in the first half. Maybe after the goals went in, it knocked the stuffing out of the players as well. But I thought we had quite a lot of time yesterday in space on the ball, and we didn't get closed down. So it's quite hard to judge some of the players. They can only play the opposition that are out there, but it's quite hard to judge just how good they were with the opposition. You know, you can only beat what's in front of you effectively.
Yeah, it's interesting you point that out just on that, because it was quite evident from where we were, and we were right behind, obviously, the dugouts. After that first goal went in, you could just hear their manager, Brendan Kelly, just screaming, get up the pitch, and they looked sapped. Even 15 minutes in, once that first goal had gone in on the around the 20th minute mark, they just couldn't get up the pitch. And then you've got the two centre-halves comfortable bringing out, Giles Coke splitting in front of the defence and just picking easy balls up, and they just couldn't get up the pitch to press them. And that was after about 20 minutes after that first goal went in. I think they put that much into the first 10 minutes and trying to make it difficult for Town that they just succumbed when that first goal went in. And you could just hear him on the sidelines just constantly berating them, trying to get them up the pitch, but they just couldn't do it.
Oh, well, it was a thoroughly professional performance. It was one of those where I think they could have shook hands at half time and saved everyone 45 minutes. I think Bapaga's goal at the end was a lovely one to finish it off with. Beautiful turn and got away from his man. He'd been threatening it all day as well. Lee was talking about, I assume, strikers as an alternative. He was talking about Billy Walters. Apparently he's got, what links does he have at Grimsby? Does anybody know? Lee, what links does he have? He's born in Epsom.
We've got water in the docks.
Oh yeah, is that it? Is his dad Joe Waters or something? He probably is now.
Or Billy the Fish Senior.
What, Lee? What's the link? Send it through and we'll put it up. But he's an option, and I'm sure you know what Paul Hurst will do. He'll pull out a person we've never heard of that scored 2 goals for Newport over 385 games, comes in and scores 25 for us, because that seems what he's able to do. Elliot, I mean, he's a man from your neck of the woods. What have you made of Paul? And sort of how he goes about it. I mean, I absolutely adore him now in terms of the way he can go about changing a squad. What have you seen with him, with your experience, and what differentiates him from other managers, I guess?
Yeah, first of all, he's, from a media perspective, really good to deal with. He's approachable. He gives you a bit of personality, which can't be said for every manager. Some are closed books. Some you can ask them 10 different questions and they'll give you the exact same answer for all 10. But you do sense that there's a level of openness there and a level of honesty. So that's always good from my perspective, from a work point of view, that you can ask more intricate questions and perhaps maybe more personal questions, and he'll answer them and he'll give you some insight. And that's what we want as journalists and what we want to try and give for the fans that obviously want to know more about the team. So he's been really good to deal with. The club as a whole and the media department are really good to deal with. And I think that he's done a really, really good job in terms of transforming the squad. As you said, I think he's weeded out those characters that weren't fighting for the shirt perhaps as much as they could have been last season, or just that general attitude. Because, you know, he said something interesting yesterday when he's talking about the size of the squad and the fact that he's going to have some players that are not going to be happy that they're not playing. But equally, he said it's so important that even when that is the case, that it's not a fractious group and everyone is in the same boat. Yes, some players will be less happy than others because they're not playing as often, but that's natural with football. That he can accept. But the harmony within the group is really, really strong, despite that some are getting less game time than others. So I think that he's installing a mentality that will be important as we get into the months, because Town are going to have a bad spell at some point. You know, we've not really seen the character of the team massively tested by a bad run, although they obviously responded brilliantly from losing at Bromley with 3 National League wins in a row and then obviously winning the FA Cup as well. But there will be a run where they maybe win 1 game in 5, for example, and that's where personalities and the harmony within the group will be tested. And from what I've seen and from the way Paul speaks and from what we see in, you know, when we go down to the training ground stuff, it seems a really tight-knit group. And I think he's certainly the right man to sort of lead this rebuild under ambitious owners. And momentum's such a huge thing, I think, especially from like League One to the National League. You've seen with Southend, for example, how they've dropped League One, League Two, bottom end of the National League, because that negative momentum is huge. Grimsby, the fact they've had the takeover, it's born a new era for them. And if they can get it right, you could see how this club could really move through the divisions. And obviously, I don't want to go too early. I mean, we're at 11 games into the season in the National League, so you know.
Elliot suggests championship within 5 years' time.
I think that is your headline. I think that is what I've just said, basically. But you know, you can see what he's trying to do and how he's trying to restructure and rebuild the club, even from things like just like restoring a bit of pride in the training ground. They've made sure there's been like licks of paint just to freshen things up in and around, because it was starting to look a little bit tired and old. They are looking for a new training ground as a separate issue anyway, but just tidying things up, timekeeping, things like that. It just seems like a more professional and structured group, and that's really important, especially when they have got a bigger squad and you're only allowed to name 5 players on the bench, that everyone's still pulling in the same direction and knows that if you drop out of this team at the minute, it doesn't matter who you are. Ultimately, if you lose that shirt, like look at Mitchie, for example. He was one of the best players in the opening 10 games of the season, gets sent off with a lack of discipline, and then he might not get back in. And you would say that he's as I say, he's going to be under pressure to win that right back spot back, because he's dropped out of the team and they've performed well without him. So ultimately, no matter who you are, whether you're Giles Coke, whether you're Efforty, there's going to be pressure on you. So everyone needs to be pulling in the same direction, be ready to be called upon. And I think Hurst has done a really good job to sort of install that into the mentality of the group.
I think if McAtee's fit, I think the right back is the biggest call on Saturday.
I agree with you.
I think he'll bring Crooks back in, and I think the rest of the midfield and the front foot. I think, unfortunately, I think Coke will drop out. I don't know.
I think Bapega gets the nod. I think Bapega gets the nod ahead of Sousa. I think from what Paul was intimating at a little bit, with the fact that he said yesterday, if I was one of the front players that had played,
I was going to say,
and not scored,
then I would be very disappointed. And I was talking to John, who obviously does the Radio Humber side, and we were sort of trying to who could he be sort of going after a little bit, well, not going after, but what I mean, sort of hinting at. Sousa's the one where, for all of his quality, sometimes the final ball, and does he score enough goals for the amount of quality he's got? And then you've got Bapega, who, yes, he could have had a couple more yesterday, but he's got 2 assists. He scored a very good goal at the end, and he's got that flexibility as well in terms of versatility.
He's winning penalties as well.
Exactly. So I think Bapega gets the nod ahead of Sousa at the minute for me, and rightly so. and then the rest of the team sort of picks itself apart from right back. Right back's interesting.
I mean,
I would stick with Sears. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would
Sears
as well.
at the minute.
I don't see what he's done to lose that shirt. I thought at Woking was his best performance comfortably. I thought a little bit nervy at Altrincham, which is understandable because that was a tough away game and he'd only just made his debut against Dover, which you can't really put much down to because, it was 5-0 at half-time and an out whitewash. But then I thought he really grew into the performance. I mean, he played one lovely ball at Woking in particular, sort of inside their fullback and split to put Sousa through. And he just looks like, certainly going forward, he was solid defensively even at Altrincham, but going forward, he looks more confident, like he's more willing to carry the ball, more willing to play more dangerous passes to try and get the wingers in. And I just think he's growing into the role. And you've got to look at what has he done wrong. Yeah, I would, just looking at the comment below, I would say FT is probably more of an attacking threat. But, you've got to reward players for the performances. If he comes into the team and does well and the team's doing well, why would you change it? And I think that's Paul Hurst's approach. But if I had to be a betting man, I think FT will come back in just purely for the fact that I thought FT would play yesterday. And I thought he would get some minutes into him, given he's missed 3 games. And the fact that he played all 90 minutes makes me think that FT will probably come back in.
Mike, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think with Papaga, after a bit of a nervy sort of start to the season, I know he said to the Coventry media that he had COVID, which might have explained it. I think just every single game, he just looks like he's getting better. And I think that is a reflection on the sort of manager Paul Hurst is, where he can take these young players, which he's done everywhere he's been at, and sort of bring the best out of them. In terms of Afete, I think it's really interesting what we've got at both fullback sides this year. So we've got Afete and Revan on the right and the left, who are 2 more expansive attacking fullbacks. But then you've got someone like Crooks and Sears, who you may argue are more defensively solid wing backs. So he's got a huge array of options for however he wants to set up with his fullbacks. And just having all those options around the team, you've got that up front and in midfield. It just shows you any situation we're in, we can sort of adapt to play a different way. So I think that's really interesting.
We talked about a run a bit ago about sort of what the club will do when they get a bit of a challenge going. We haven't lost consecutive games now for 26 matches. That goes all the way back to sort of March of last year when we'd lost 3 in a row to, who was it off the top of my head? I'm looking at it. I think we lost to Harrogate. We lost 1-0 to Harrogate. We lost that game with Stevenage when Waterfall let the guy through. And then the 2-1 defeat to Forest Green. And ever since, we've not lost consecutive games. So that's how far you now have to go back to find it when we've sort of done that. So it'll be interesting to see exactly when that happens and how quickly we can turn it, because that's usually the sign of a good team. Going through some of the questions that came through, Andrew Weeks was comparing Papaga to Jack Lester. How dare you suggest that Papaga could potentially simulate anything? Lee Chisholm said that Waters has family around here and he grew up with his nana in Cleethorpes for a few years. It was mentioned when he was at Cheltenham. I didn't know that. Nanas are a massive part of the whole Grimsby Town infrastructure. If it wasn't for Nanas, I don't think we'd have had Dean Henderson either. She lived in Caister, I think. And then Richard Young was saying as well, the only thinking to recall the Feki will be considering the attacking options he gives. Revan and Feti linking with our wide forwards is a frightening prospect for most defences at this level. I think most defences are terrified of us at the moment. The game yesterday doesn't help. As I said on Twitter, I wished Sousa and Papaga would stop doing nutmegs, especially when Sousa's only on a 12-month contract. If he could cut that out while he was on telly, would be really appreciated. And so we can sort of keep him up under wraps. Kidderminster next in the draw, a team obviously that we've played a fair few times now. The sad part is obviously the catering isn't up to much now, apparently. What are your thoughts on that draw? And I would like to think that we will be favourites going into that tie. It gives us a good chance of getting into the second round and then potentially a little bit of a money spinner if we were to get through that as well to the third round. What were your thoughts? I would have liked, someone like Sudbury. But Mike, what were you thinking of it?
I'd have liked an easier draw, somebody like Scunthorpe or something like that. I think it's...
I need a sound effect.
It's on paper, it should be a game we win, but football's not played on paper. I think it's a tougher game.
It depends. Does the National League allow it?
Yeah, I think it's a game we need to be careful of. I think they're mid-table in the league below. Got plenty of old league players in there, so they'll know the way around an FA Cup game. So I think it's got to attack it the same way we've attacked this one. Take it seriously and try and move on to the next round.
They didn't make a meal of it though. Like, how does it take
3 hours?
Yeah, like 20 minutes to get a load of balls. I do wish one day they'd absolutely fuck it up, and hang on, there's a ball still left in here as they go to find out the home team and then find out who they're playing.
Have you ever watched the Champions League draw? That is the ultimate. Like,
is it?
It
doesn't come up much for us.
Here are our 8 ambassadors. We're going to watch all of their 100 goals before we do anything. Like, that is ridiculous. So, by comparison, that the ITV coverage was quite tame, to be honest.
I want to go back to that one when they did it in a Morrison's. I can't remember which cup that was. I think it was the League Cup.
Maisie went. We live around the corner from the Leisure Centre in Cleethorpes, and Maisie went swimming at 1 o'clock, and she was back not long after the draw finished.
Was she? That says all you need to know, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So Kidderminster coming up, which will be nice, and we'll hopefully get someone on from the show to talk about what Kidderminster can bring. And then we've got Yeovil at home. What do we know about Yeovil? Is there anything that we do know about Yeovil? The only thing I remember, it was the nadir of Big Knot's reign, was it not? When didn't someone get sent off for fighting our own players? Bruce?
I can't tell you that, but Jamie Osborne scored a great goal against Yeovil, didn't he? Going back a bit further, Andy Parkinson scored a cracker against them. I'm sure it was them. We've scored some good goals. Ashley Sasanovic, remember him? He dribbled through at, is it Huish Park where they play? Is that right? Somebody?
That is correct.
Anybody?
Yes, they do.
That was it.
He jinxed through there.
It was a 3-0 defeat. We lost.
Carly Osborne.
Yeah, Carly Osborne and Mitch Rose got sent off. And I wanted to think, didn't Gavin Gunning get sent off? But apparently I'm wrong.
Haven't they got, what's his name now? Adi Yusuf. Didn't Yusuf go there?
Yeah.
1 moment, please. Yes.
We've got Ruben Reid up front as well, which is obviously an EFL folklore hero, having travelled around the lower leagues.
I'm trying to look. Chris Dagnall. His name rings a bell.
Chris Dagnall, yeah. He played Barnsley, didn't he?
I'm going
Alex, I don't know why we're doing this, really. We don't care about the opposition. It's all about us now.
It'd only be 20 minutes long.
We don't even need. We don't even need the old. Wasn't it Buckley or was it Cloughie? You know, let them worry about us. We're not worried about them.
Yeovil have apparently got Mitch Rose. Is that right?
Penn.
Yeah, Lee's just said so as well.
Bloody hell! That's the unbeaten run gone, isn't it?
Yeah. Penalty.
3 wins in a row.
Penalty, 89th minute. It's 0-0. That's the grim bearing in you.
Hopefully they'll let one of our lads take it.
Yeah. That's close to being negative. That is. I mean, it's a pretty good place to be at the moment, I guess. Elliot, did you do much work with the club beforehand? Did you know much about town before you got the job, or?
I never covered them in official capacity now. Obviously, as a follower of the EFL, I was fully aware of the story, and particularly the sort of takeover stuff from last year. But no, in all honesty, I hadn't. But it's been a fantastic experience, and it's very clear to see that the club's heading in the right direction from just the messages I received after I'd taken over, just the positive messages, and it's been quick to see how the club's on such a an upwards trajectory, and long may it continue as well, because obviously from my point of view, although I'm not here to cheerlead the club by any means stretch, and that's not my role, equally it's always better for us as journalists, no matter who you cover, if the club's doing well, because it means fans are more engaged first and foremost, which is always good for us. The manager's always in a better mood, which again is better, and the club is more lenient with things like granting player interviews. If you've just lost 9 in a row, if you were at Scunthorpe, for example, you wouldn't have a cat and else chance of getting the player you want to interview in the week, because why would they risk that when all that's going to happen is negative publicity?
They've got not much else to do.
Well, yeah, or you could just put locks on gates or whatever.
We got to talk about that later.
Yeah. But
I thought it was brutal that Jamie Finn got associated with the old regime and got moved on.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing.
He got us relegated single-handedly.
We're touching on this. We did touch on this before we came on. Like, Elliot, you're very right. But I mean, I'll be honest, Jamie wasn't short of a story or two in the last 6 months of his job. I mean, there must be some points in which you come in on a Tuesday going, God, we've won 8 in a row. Everyone's scored. I don't really know what to print. Jamie, all he had to do was just go on the fishy and see what rant had been put up by Get Your Facts Right.
Yeah, it was. There was plenty to go at in the last sort of 18 months for James, no doubt. But no, it's been good. I would always rather, although you want the good stories, they will come at some point. But equally, it's just nice as a bedding in period to see a club doing well and things be on the up. And it also means Paul Hurst's a bit more open, so you can ask a few more interesting things that then can be saved for that sort of middle of the week part where the game's sort of gone and done with, but equally you're not speaking to Paul again till the Thursday or the Friday. So there's the training ground stuff's really interesting at the minute in terms of where they're going to go with that, and the sort of off the field things and plans that the owners have got is really interesting. So, and obviously that's not something that the club have had. They've had obviously Fenty, who was not willing to do anything. I don't want to say positive, but positive basically to help the infrastructure of the club, whereas it's a completely different outlook now. So that's really interesting from that perspective. And it's good it's always better for any journalist if the club's doing well, but equally if it's not, then it's our job to highlight those things.
It was so many little things when Adam showed me around Cheapside that had been done, like the fact that one of the most expensive things they'd done was getting rid of loads of trees. So the conifers
cut loads down.
They were all coming and they were so overgrown that were kind of impeding on where the pitch would be. So they took them all back and they had to take out a few of them as well, so they could get some proper netting up for penalty practice, I assume. And those silly little things that they've got going.
Yeah,
and
this is kind of what I was sort of saying earlier when I was saying about just adding that touch of professionalism. And I asked Paul about obviously the training ground on Thursday, which I've not used yet, so I'm spoiling my own quotes here. But about the fact that in sort of player recruitment, when you're looking to bring in players, particularly on loan from clubs that are higher up in the pyramid, they're going to be used to a certain standard. Now, you're obviously not going to be able to match the facilities of Manchester United, Manchester City, etc. But just things like this, it just adds that extra professional. And it can be the difference to tip the balance that a player wants to come to you rather than someone in the same division as you that's, looked after the training ground a little bit better. And having new facilities when they do move as well will only help with that as well.
It was the same person when we were talking. He goes, when we bring a player, where do you want me to take him? Like before, do we take him to Cheapside, which is at the time was mouldy and rotten? Do we take them around the back of the main stand? Do we take them in through the Findus, which is basically the most up-to-date part, but it looks like it's from the 70s? Where do you want me to take a player to impress them? Where this is what we are. And it'll be really exciting to see where we go. I think Grimsby is harder than most places to find land to build a facility because, as we've discussed many times before, it's encapsulated by the coast. We lose 67% of the land around us because it's the Humber. We're not like a Birmingham or a Burton where you can sort of spread out 360 degrees. You're kind of limited. Not to mention the fact you've got then a massive RSPB nature reserve at the end of Cleethorpes, so that sort of is discounted as well. So it's going to be really interesting. But I imagine Andrew Pettit is if there's any man in Grimsby that can find you a bit of land to get a training ground on, he's the man. And Bruce, if we have to take your house out, I'm afraid we'll get you a DM35 tent.
They need to be asking some of the house builders. They seem to get permission all right.
Compulsory purchase orders are coming through as we speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Go.
Hang on, this one's for the main stand.
Hang on.
Oh, he's actually going. Did you cover anywhere else before as well, Elliot? Before you joined town, who do we have to mark ourselves against?
No, well, I've not directly. This is sort of my first club reporting role where I've been the main reporter, if you like, and the sole reporter for and responsible for a club's coverage. But basically, what I've been doing for the last year or so was working on Yorkshire Live, which is a sister title of Grimsby Live and the Grimsby Telegraph, which they launched about 18 months ago now. So looking after Sheffield Wednesday, Huddersfield Town, Hull Daily Mail's part of that as well, and Hull City, Sheffield United and Leeds United. So they will put that, but I wasn't sort of the main reporter. I was sort of second in command, if you like. So it's a sort of supplementing the main sort of coverage of our reporters. And my career aspirations have always been that I wanted to be the main reporter for a club. And when I got told that obviously James was going to move on and move into a different role, they said, we'd really like you to apply for it and we think you'd be a good fit. And I jumped at the opportunity, although I don't live particularly nearby. The league's all Southern based anyway, so I'm going to spend half my time in London anyway. So it doesn't really matter for me. So no, I always wanted to be a club reporter, and this was a really good opportunity to sort of make that first step into this side. But I was covering, I say, the Yorkshire clubs on sort of a supplementary basis, rather than being the sort of main reporter. So that was the jump for me, and it's going to be interesting. Obviously, dealing with managers day to day, players as well. It's going to be good for me and good experience, and I'm really looking forward to it.
It's the most entertaining club on the planet. It might not always be the best, but there's always something to talk about. In terms of impressions as well, then I guess have been relatively positive. Have you had a chance to speak to the owners and Debbie as well, or?
No, not as of yet. They were at the ground. They were at the game on Saturday. Jason and Andrew at Bromsgrove on Saturday. Was sat just a bit in front of us. But I am planning to. Obviously, in the next few months, when I've got my feet under the table, we'll definitely be doing that. But everyone's been really warm and welcoming, so I have no doubt that it'll be good to go and meet them face to face and go and have a chat about what Grimsby want to do. And as I say, the club have been really good with me and with James as well, certainly since the regime changed in terms of being open, letting us have the players that we want to speak to as well. So I've got an Alex Hunt interview coming out across the course of from tomorrow, basically, which I did on Friday, which was really good to speak to him.
He picks the Sheffield Wednesday player. That's how it goes.
Our Sheffield Wednesday
Coat next, is it?
Our Sheffield Wednesday right was off last week, so I was filling in on that a little bit as well. So two birds, one stone, work smarter, not harder, as they say. But no, it was really interesting, really good to speak to Alex, and we have pretty good access, and that's all you can really ask for as journalists. That the club work with you, and there's a bit of give and take in that way.
Do any of you gents have a question for Elliot? Because I've got one to sort of end it on, but I didn't know if any of you got an idea.
I thought in that it's not especially a sort of question for Elliot, but just can get his opinion on it. I thought it was quite interesting that all the loan players were allowed to play in the cup if they wanted them to on Saturday. It maybe speaks a little bit about the potential of perhaps keeping, particularly, is it two of them till after? We've got Hunt and Towler.
Yeah, Hunt and Towler are to January, and then Bapega and Revana to the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm surprised because Alex Hunt has played a little bit at Wednesday, hasn't he, in the past?
Yes, he has. In particular, under Gary Monk, he featured a fair bit. He's been on sort of the fringes of the first team for a while. He's been highly rated. It's just not quite the opportunity. And then they went from Gary Monk, who was trying to propose youth and sort of bring in a new era, and then went to Tony Pulis, who obviously, that I have to say, horrendous football, a real dinosaur, I'm afraid to say it is, as much as it is a cliche. And just went back to all the experienced players and ditched the young players, wouldn't even bring them off the bench, even though there weren't other options. So he's been plagued by the fact that he's been in and out with different regimes and different approaches from how they want to rebuild the squad. So, but he has played, and he's one that they'll be interested in looking at this situation. Before the start of the season, I was a little bit surprised he went to the National League and not to a League Two club. I thought he would have potentially got a Football League loan, but he seems to be settling in. The only thing I was worried about is I wondered if, because he's obviously very slight and very small, I wondered if the physicality of the National League would be a little bit too much for him. But it hasn't been. From what I've seen, he's really got, well, he'd always get stuck in, but I've not seen many instances where his size has been a hindrance. He's been muscled off the ball or anything like that. So I think, as I say, I spoke to him and asked him a few of these questions on Friday. So I'll be pushing those throughout the week. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, he's definitely interested in staying for the season. But obviously there's a lot of factors that go into that. What does Sheffield Wednesday want to do? What does Paul Hurst want to do as well? Because he could get injured. They might want to go down a slightly different route as well. Things might change. Sheffield Wednesday might want to recall him. But I think Hunt would be content definitely if he stayed for the season. And the other interesting fact is he's out of contract at Hillsborough in the summer as well. So that's adds another layer into it in the fact that they how things could progress in that way.
What do you think the likelihood of Chef Wednesday letting him stay out are then?
I think they're quite high. I think if he's, I think the biggest factor that could stop him staying is if a League Two club that's doing really well comes in and guarantees him game time. That could be one where Wednesday look at it and go, we could recall him and send him out on League Two and he could play week in, week out, and that helps his progression further. But I don't think Alex Hunt would be against staying. I think he'd be quite open and happy. Well, he said as much to me to spoil one of my pieces. He said he's open to staying for the rest of the season, definitely. And also, if Grimsby are doing well, you've also got that sense of wanting to see the job through. If they're near promotion, players that have played a long part in promotion up to January, if Grimsby are doing well at the top of the league again, you've got that added sense of wanting to see the job through, get a promotion on your CV and things like that, which plays in their favour. So if you put a gun to my head and said, will he be there at the end of the season, I would edge closer to yes rather than no. But there's, he could get injured tomorrow and be out for 3 months, and that would change everything, obviously. So there's a lot of factors that go into these conversations, and there's, different people with different interests. But the most important thing is Alex Hunt would be willing to stay, from what he told me on Friday. So that bodes well.
Sign him up.
Sign him up.
I knew his technical ability would stand out. It was just, whether the physicality would be a little bit too much. But technically, he's above National League level, definitely. And it'll be interesting to see, how he progresses for the rest of the season as things go. But he's impressed me. He's done well. I think he's someone that suits Paul Hurst's style of play, especially when, you can get drawn into playing a more physical, direct battle in the National League. So having a midfielder that wants to get on the ball, wants to pick the possession off the two centre-backs and play through the lines is really good for Grimsby.
It's all roses at the moment. I'm not sure how it's going to continue. I mean, the only thing I'd probably want to ask is sort of, were your sort of non-biased eyes coming in with new, fresh eyes? Is there anything else that the club need to be looking at to progress and move forward? Is there anything in particular, maybe off the field, that we don't necessarily have that others do? I was always quite surprised to hear Macca when he talks about the training ground going, actually, it's not that bad. Like Peterborough didn't even have their own training ground. It's quite nice to have a place that's ours. Is there anything?
A lot of places don't. Like Paul Hurst was saying this week that that's their home, that's their base. That as much as the stadium is their home ground, they're only there once every fortnight. So the training ground's the most important bit from that perspective, because that's their home, it's their base. And I think it's hard to say, really, because the things that you would say they need to improve on, they're already looking at. The new owners are coming in and they're going to do it. And they're not going to spend millions overnight. They can't, you can't just build a new training ground or a new stadium overnight. These things take time. And from what's been said publicly, even last week, Jason Stotwood was speaking to Matt Dean on Radio Humberside about where they want that, in the next couple of months, they should have a decision on where they want to build the stadium. And they've got Andrew Petit, obviously, is looking into different locations. So training ground would be one, although they're not in a bad spot. They've got lovely pitches out there, the nice pitches. It's relatively secluded with the trees that go over it. They've got a sort of like a classroom hub where we go and do press, where they can have the team meetings and everything. I've not been beyond into the actual base where the changing facilities are and everything. Obviously that's beyond my bounds, but it's not a bad place at all. But equally, that is where, certainly, especially with as I say earlier, recruitment is going to be a big factor. So moving training ground will be good. Bits of renovation to the stadium as well, albeit I've only been there once. These sort of things, and I think they will come with time. I think what we've seen from the owners coming in is they want to invest in the infrastructure of the club, and that's the best sort of sign you can see from an owner. They're here for the long term, or certainly the medium to long term, rather than someone that's come in and just gone, I'm going to spend 500 grand on this National League squad and try and blitz our way out of the division. They're trying to do things sustainably, but whilst having the foot on the accelerator, certainly more than what it was before to do these things. But they do take time. So there's nothing that I would suggest that they're not already looking at that needs to be addressed, drastically.
Lee wanted to know about Tom's favourite player, Sean Scannell, about whether you've seen enough of him to work out whether or not he's going to be within a chance of getting in the squad.
It'd be interesting. He'll certainly be around the fringes. He's not going to be fit for. He's not going to be when I say fit, he's not going to be training with the squad for another fortnight at least. It was probably a month when he got that scan back, so he's not going to be back training with the first team for at least 2 or 3 weeks. Then he's got to get match sharp, and he's not played obviously since pre-season, so he's well out of that in terms of rustiness. So it's going to be a while before he does come back into the reckoning. And they've got an abundance of options on the wing at the minute and in that forward line. Who would you leave out? Would you leave, you've already got Papega, Sousa, Clifton and McAtee fighting for 3 spots. Where do you leave someone out? Maybe it could be a different option up front, as we were talking about with Lenny, and a different option up front instead of Ryan Taylor. So I think that maybe it could be an option up there, but it's going to be off the bench at the minute because there's so much competition. And why would you change things when these players are doing so well already and a match fit and sharp? And Scannell's not proven he can be relied upon fitness-wise, and he's going to take a while to get back up to full match speed. So the answer would have to be no at the minute, but obviously a lot's going to change until he's not going to be ready to start games for another 5 or 6 weeks, realistically, because he's not going to be back in training for 2 or 3 weeks. Then he's got to get up to match speed. If he can play, for the reserve team a couple of times, that would help. Or, as we were saying earlier about the lack of games, that doesn't help either. So it's going to be a while before he's even really in proper full contention. I mean, they've been quite cautious with Max Wright in the way that they were only ever going to bring him on for the last 5 minutes at Woking. He said if Clifton or Sousa had got injured at like half time, he wouldn't have been able to bring Max Wright on. So he was only going to come on for the last 5 minutes. And then they went, it was very much, we asked him, is he in contention to start at Bromsgrove? And the answer again was no, we don't want to overload him. So if they're being that cautious with Max Wright, Scannell's been out for even longer and is older. So I don't see him being in contention to start. You might even be looking at, if Grimsby were to get to the FA Cup third round, maybe that's the sort of area they could be looking at. But I don't see him being really up there challenging for another 6 weeks, really, to start games.
That's maybe the thing as well with
nice
the
one,
forwards that he's got. We forget that we've got a forward in Joel Grant that we've not seen yet.
Yeah, Joel Grant. Joel Grant could be back as well in about a fortnight, which is
when
good.
He
should be back training.
When we talk about, he literally came on against Cleetown in the first friendly and went off after about 15 minutes, and we haven't seen him since. So, that's another player that's in the squad that you almost forget is there.
Danny Rose.
When we took, what do you have to? Bloody hell!
Sorry, mate. He's here. He's on the books. He's ready to go. He's raring.
Well, he's at Darlington now. He's gone.
Yeah, he's only got a month though, and then he's back because they ain't going to keep him for longer.
We'll find a 5G mask.
Turn them round. How are they doing? How did they do yesterday? Did they win? Hopefully they win. We want them to go on a great run, don't we?
Absolutely. That's a hell of a swap, isn't it? We get Enrico Sousa and they get Danny Rose. Well and truly been done. Andy Carr spoke about the club regarding moving forward, talking about scouting in the area. He says that they're not fully scouting future local talent properly. Many tournaments, I'm led to believe, GTO don't have scouts at the games, yet many other clubs do in regards to local lads going to clubs and signing for one such as Lincoln and Hull, who I guess have got better facilities and a longer reach at the moment. But it'll be interesting to see if that gets tackled at any point. Lee said as well that do they call him Scans because that's what he's always having. They lost, apparently, according to Richard Young, who's been brilliant so far, and we probably need to get him in. They lost, and Rose was an unused substitute. So he's doing really well there. At least said
if he'd have played, they'd have won.
Oh, if he'd have played, they'd have won.
We're on a sales pitch, Alex. Come on.
Yeah, that's true.
Get with the game. They'd have won if he'd have played.
And Lee wants to know if Moraes is still training with the youth team. Is that true, Elliot? Have you seen?
I don't know off the top of my head, if I'm honest, but I can certainly ask the question.
Mr. Weeks, I know you're around the club at some time, so if you want to answer that, you could more than welcome send it in. But I think that's it, really, gentlemen. We've had a bloody good week again. Another hammering of a team. And, Yeovil come up next. Hopefully the run continues. And then we go on to Got No Fans Wealdstone, and we can get 3 points there as well. Any last thoughts before we depart and everyone can go and enjoy their Sunday evening? Good stuff.
Good.
Well, Elliot, thank you for joining us. Mike, thank you as well for joining us. Bruce, always a pleasure.
Cheers, mate.
And thank you for making an effort and changing the shirt in the background as well.
I've got about another 5 pods in me, then I'll have to retire.
Oh, is it? Is that it?
I went to my shirt box tonight and it was a little bit, I was like trolling them out. But hey,
do you want the Linwood one?
No, you're all right, thanks. I've got a Scotland one I'd rather put up. I might even be coming to Wealdstone, yeah. Just
Good
depends
man. It's
whether-
about time you came to some games.
You'll be there, won't you?
Yeah, as long as there's
Yeah.
tickets available. And we got our flag. I've just got to wait for it to come through the post. And then we've got a flag that we can use. It was a whole 40 quid. So there you go. That's where the pod money's
40
going.
quid well spent.
That picture you've got on the
10 by 5.
A4. That picture
Yeah.
you've got on the background today, the smoke bomb. It was. I'm right in the middle of that. It was about an 8-year-old.
Oh, it was you, was it? Is that why you're giving Maisie an alibi?
Yeah. She wasn't at the game. She wasn't at the game yesterday.
It's a shame. Do you know what? I'm kind of torn because they do look nice and they do look quite spectacular. But if they cause people respiratory problems, if they cause issues for the club, then knock it on the head. There's no point. And it's nice to see that everyone stayed behind the barrier yesterday, at least when we scored. Maybe it was a bit too high for those portly gentlemen that like to get on the pitch. A bit like that Scunny fan who was trying to do it at Harrogate, if anybody saw that video, which was always amusing. Yeah, exactly. A bit like the Forest Green team who are locked out, but we won't talk on them. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a good night, and we shall see you all hopefully after 3 points at Yeovil. Speak to you soon. Bye.